Jesus says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am." We've spent the past 6 weeks exploring the I am statements. We've considered the bread of life, the light of the world, the gate, and the good shepherd. We moved into more abstract statements: the resurrection and the life, the way, the truth, and the life. And finally, we considered abiding with Jesus, the true vine. Tonight is a different I am. It's less a metaphor and more of a simple descriptor. I am teacher and Lord. Even though the shadows are growing, even though the disciples know that Jesus will leave them soon, Jesus is not done teaching. They were probably expecting some words of wisdom over dinner from Jesus that night. What they weren't ready for was for their dinner to be interrupted by their master, their Lord, bending down and touching their dirty, calloused feet. Now, the process itself of washing your feet when you arrived at a person's home was not strange to them. Sort of like now we go to someone's house and take off your shoes at the door. A good host would provide a bowl and a towel for you to wash your feet after walking in the dusty streets. And if your host was a person of means, a servant would do the washing for you. This task was always assigned to the lowest servant in the household, the least of the least. So what in the world was the capital L Lord doing? Surely Peter wasn't the only one who couldn't quite understand. He was, however, the one who was brave enough to object to it. "You will never wash my feet," he says. "I will not allow you to humiliate yourself in this way, Jesus. You should be sitting at the head of the table, not acting like a common scullery maid." And Jesus replies, "You'll have no share with me if I don't do this, Peter." There were many more lessons to come that evening. It's a long farewell discourse in the Gospel of John. But this was the first lesson. They must have their feet washed. Their partnership with Christ depends on it. Now, it's easy for us to skip over this part, to shake our heads at Peter and move on to the part where Jesus says we are to wash other people's feet. Because that's the point, right? We are to serve other people. And we jump to that because sometimes being the one who does the serving is actually the easier part, right? We like to be the ones who help other people. We're happy to run an errand for someone who's sick. We're pleased to serve a meal at a homeless shelter. We'll volunteer to do something for someone else, even if it's an unpleasant task, like touching people's dirty feet. At least we feel good about ourselves when we're done. But Jesus makes it clear to Peter that first, we have to be willing to sit and bear our feet, our calloused, worn out, maybe stinky feet. We have to be vulnerable enough to allow someone to touch those feet and see the grime and wash it away for us. And not just anyone, but someone who we really respect, who has all this other good work to be doing, who really shouldn't have to deal with whatever mess we have in our lives. It's embarrassing to think that someone like that is lowering themselves in this way just to take care of us. We don't like the feeling of not being in control, of relying on someone or something else. You will never wash my feet, we say. I once took a group of youth to Washington, D.C. for a week of service. We were sleeping on the floor of a church at night, and this church right in the heart of the district had a breakfast program each morning. So volunteers would come in real early and prepare a hot meal for anyone who needed it. And because we were staying there at night, we were invited to eat breakfast there each morning. Well, when the youth were told that first morning to get in line, along with all of the unhoused folks who were already queuing up, they were confused. They said, well, we should be the ones serving breakfast. We're here to serve other people. And we said, no, you need to get in line and eat breakfast. This is our breakfast. They were so resistant to being fed, to receiving a meal, to stand in the same line as people who, in their eyes, didn't have their act together enough to be able to afford food. There was one young woman in particular who came from a very privileged background. And she thought that this was just about the worst possible thing that could ever happen to her. She was also a little dramatic. But she truly did find it humiliating. She eventually went through the line, and she sat down at a table next to a woman who looked like she had lived a particularly hard life. As they ate their biscuits and gravy, a conversation started, which ended up continuing every morning that week. At the end of the week, this young woman and her new friend shed tears as they said goodbye to one another. They had each felt this deep connection, and each of them said their lives had been changed because they had met one another. That youth experienced a share of Jesus because she allowed herself to be humbled, to be the one receiving the gifts of others. She allowed herself to be fed. And really, how can we give grace to someone else if we don't allow ourselves to receive it first? It's important to Jesus that they learn this lesson. Because Jesus, as the Word made flesh, has been witnessing to God's presence in the world. And now the disciples will need to take that on. As he returns to the Father, the ongoing revelation of God in the world, the making God known, will now be up to them, will now be up to us. And the way that we can know and feel Jesus' presence, even when he is physically gone, is through love. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. And that kind of love doesn't mean one group of people are the ones who serve and another group are the ones who receive. We must all love one another. We do that by, yes, washing another's feet, and through letting someone else wash ours. It's the mutual sharing of love and care that makes God known. We still have so much to learn from our beloved teacher. Thankfully, we have lots of opportunities to practice both giving and receiving this kind of humble love. It's one of the many gifts Jesus gave his disciples that night. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them, he said. Soon, our teacher and Lord will continue to teach. Because having loved his own who were in the world, he loves them to the end.